Hi, and welcome to episode 6 of the 505 cast. I'm wearing a down jacket here on Memorial Day weekend because apparently ski season's come back. Killington's a few miles up the road. Maybe they'll spin the chairs for us. I don't think there's any snow though. Today we have a fantastic guest. I've really enjoyed every one of these, but Mike Holt was my guest for this episode, and boy, a nicer guy. He's won half of the last 6 worlds and been second in the other two. I was fourth in the one before that. So he's pretty good at sailing. Super nice guy. The most willing to help. If any of you are participating in the Wednesday Facebook discussions, he's always the first guy to weigh in. Always got a great solution to the question. Just happy to share whatever he knows, and he knows basically everything. Still working hard at it. Still looking forward to coming east to go sail with us at the Buzzards Bay Regatta and the Newport Regatta and the North Americans in Newport in September. So that will be great. But enjoy this episode. It was a wonderful conversation. It was Mike is the person I'd seen most recently before recording. I see Pete Allery all the time, but with winter and COVID, we hadn't seen each other in a while before that episode. So it felt like a continuation of last weekend for me, this one, and it was really fun. So have a good time, have a great Memorial Day weekend, and we'll look forward to the next one. Thanks. Okay. Hi, and welcome to episode 6 of the 505 cast. Today we have a really marquee one. I'm here with Mike Holt, who probably everybody knows. If you don't, get out from under your rock. He has won half of the last 6 world championships and been second in the other half with a couple of different crews. He's by birth a Brit, but has lived in California since a long time, and I have a few questions about that because I hear there's a good story about it. But without any more ado, welcome Mike Holt.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you. Thanks for saying yes. And so one of the great things about Mike, in addition to being a good sailor and a nice guy, he really personifies the helpfulness of everybody in the class. If you take a look at the Facebook on Wednesday thing, Mike's always the first guy in. Like, he's almost shoving his notebook in your face. It's awesome. So Mike, you're just a boon to the class, and I'm super psyched for this. So as I said, by birth you're a Brit. How did you get into sailing?
There was never a time in my life where sailing wasn't part of it. Growing up, my parents had a yacht, and I had no concept of what people who didn't go sailing did at the weekend. You know, the ice chest was at the bottom of the stairs, and Mum was baking loaves of fruit bread to take on the boat, and off we went every weekend. So I never knew anything different.
Right. Cool. And then for your own sailing, was that like in toppers, or how did that start?
No, I've got a bit of an unusual path into where I am now. We had a 26-foot yacht when I was very small.
Yeah.
And then Dad was sort of jumping up the boat sizes, and then he got a hull and deck. It was sort of the 70s when I was a kid, and he fitted out a hull and deck and did that a couple of times. So I helped him fit out the boats as we went along, and just sort of cruising at the weekend and the occasional race. I had a sort of a mirror dinghy that I used to sail school summer holidays, and that was really it. And then when I was 15 or 16, a friend of mine who used to have a mirror dinghy and lived around the corner, and we used to just mess around in the local creek in the summer. His dad had promised him, if he did well at his exams at the end of the school year, he would get him a 420. As luck would have it, he was far too big for a 420, and their neighbour was one, Keith Mustoe, and conversation ensued that he was going to get Simon, who this friend was, his dad was going to get him a 420, and the conversation was something like, he'll sink a 420. You can't get him a 420. And then, well, what shall I get? He said, well, the only boat you can get him is a 505. So there we are, two 16-year-olds sailing a 505, and I was on the wire crewing, and that's how it all started. So I went from yachts and mirror dinghies messing around to suddenly I'm sailing a 505.
Amazing, amazing. That's not wildly dissimilar from Ethan, who was a couple years behind Larry Tuttle in school, and same deal. And they wound up going to a Worlds and doing okay about that age. It's great. Nothing like time in the boat, huh?
No, I've got a few years of history now. So yeah. So the first championship I did was, I think, 1985 in Weymouth, the UK Nationals. There was something like 115 boats there. I was crewing. I think we finished something like 95th.
Which is pretty awesome that there were 95 boats there to be. We'll get there. Yeah. And so was it more or less instant? Like, you know, you pulled in the jib sheet for the first time and you were like, yes, this is what I'm going to do? Or?
Well, it was I'd never experienced anything like it. You know, it was like, wow, this is cool. This is fun.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was crewing. So I probably weighed 140 pounds, dripping wet, and couldn't understand why we couldn't make the boat go any faster. We'd come off the start line and all the boats would disappear over the horizon. It's like, the hell are you doing back there? Make the boat go faster.
Awesome.
I know better now.
Yeah. Did you do any sailing at university or anything like that, or?
No, the UK doesn't really have that same sort of college scene.
Right.
So all the sailing is sort of weekend open meetings and sort of the open meeting circuit in the UK.
Right, but that's like huge, right? I mean, everywhere where there's like more than a spilled drink of a pond, there's like 100 boats there.
Yeah, well, back in the late 80s and early 90s, when I was doing that scene, we'd regularly get 80 or 90 boats at a weekend open meeting.
Wow.
You know, if we got less than 50, it was a bad turnout.
Right.
So yeah, it was different times.
Incredible. And then while you studied to be a printer, right?
Yeah, I'm sort of what's called electronic pre-press at the time.
Okay.
So sort of, people use Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign these days to do what I was doing with big computers back way back when.
And so you could do that, and you were sailing, and like, when did you get serious about 5-0s?
So I crewed for 2 years, so 85 and 86. And at the end of 86, the guy Simon, who I was sailing with, he was, you know, a good 50 pounds heavier than I was, and we were clearly the wrong way around in the boat, and we swapped over, and our results went from being at the very back of the fleet to somewhere nearer the sort of the middle front of the fleet.
Right.
And we got a bit excited about that and decided that we should buy a new boat. And slightly funny interlude, we called up Colin Merritt, who ran racing sailboats in the UK at the time, and said, hey, we want a new Curwood. And for whatever reason, he didn't return the call, or the call didn't get returned. So we thought, well, if they won't take our business, we bought another Parker. So we got a new Parker for the 87 season, and we sold that. And we were competitive, better with that boat, but still not really scaring anybody. And we'd be reasonably quick to the windward mark and then terrible downwind. And after 2 years of doing that, we decided to trade that boat in. It was now 89 or 88 going into 89, and actually get a Curwood. And this time Colin did return my call, and we ordered the boat and sold the boat we had, because that's, you know, we had to sell one to get the next one. We were young and poor, and Colin kind of knew that I had I had no boat, and he needed a driver to go to the south of France for one of the European Cup meetings at Easter. So I went down there and did that with him, and suddenly, with a great crew and a fully race-ready boat, we were right in the money and competitive. And I think that was the moment when I thought, I think I can do this.
Awesome.
So
and that was 89?
89, yeah.
Okay. And so did you keep sailing with Colin, or?
Yeah, Colin and I went back to, we got the new boat, and now that, you know, it's funny how life kind of works out. We got the new boat. We instantly had boat speed with the new boat. We sort of, at that time, the Australian rigs with the sort of super bendy flat sails set up,
right,
had been the predominant way people were going. But the year before, a couple of Danish guys came over, both Peterson and Soren Storm, and won every race at the UK Nationals with a D in the boat and green sails. And we decided that putting the bendy Australian rig in maybe wasn't the way to go. So we were kind of one of the first boats to go back to a D in the UK. And Hides, who were the sailmaker we used at the time, had sails inspired by the green sails. I think the sailmaker term would be.
Right.
And so we used those, and we were suddenly more than on the pace. We were extremely competitive, and then Colin and I started sailing together, because he split up with the guy he was sailing with. I think with all things in sailing, where I've got is from the people I've sailed with. I've just been lucky enough to sail with some amazing crews, right. And Colin was one of those, and you know, he was a coach. He worked in the sailing world and was a great crew, and I learned more in 2 years with sailing with Colin than I'd learned in the previous 20 years. So that was huge.
That's fantastic. So let's skip forward a couple of years and take it to 1992 in the town where you are right now. And there was the Worlds there, and it was pretty breezy, and that was pretty impactful for your life, I understand.
It was a pretty huge year for me for 92. I bought a house, and we sent the boat out to come and do the Worlds here. By now, Colin and I had moved on, and I started sailing with Neil Fulcher, who'll be familiar to most people who've travelled the world over the last 20 years sailing 5.0s. And we sort of had a plan, and we wanted to win the UK Nationals. That was kind of our big goal. And one of the steps along the way was going to Santa Cruz to do the Worlds in 92. We sort of, I remember going to the Worlds. I did the Worlds in 89, and Bruce Edwards got up and did the presentation for the Worlds in Santa Cruz, and I stood there listening. He said, "Oh, every day is 15 to 25, big ocean swells, warm and sunny." I'm like, oh, I want some of that. So immediately decided that was the next Worlds I was going to do. So made that a focus, and Neil and I, you know, spent 91 and 92 racing, and so got pretty competitive together. Put the boat in the container and came out here, and it lived up to every bit of billing that Bruce gave it. It was sensational. It was windy and great. So we did the pre-Worlds and had a good pre-Worlds, and then started the Worlds. I think after 3 races we were in 3rd or 4th position, and then we got carried away with the side attractions of Santa Cruz. I met my wife, and that absolutely changed the direction of my life. And you know, if you one of your questions I know is, what's your sort of best 5.0 moment? And without doubt, it was meeting my wife.
Good answer.
Yeah,
smart man.
And you know, that was that really. We carried on. We did okay at the Worlds. We ended up 7th, but it was definitely a distracted 7th place finish. And really, from that moment on, we bounced backwards and forwards for a few years. We lived in England for a bit after we got married, and then came back for a few years, and then back again, and then we've been back full time in the US since '01.
Okay. So is your wife a sailor? How did that whole?
So her dad was one of the people who was part of the organising committee, and Santa Cruz, they use a hoist at the time to put the boats in the water, and that's not the way we do it back home in England. You know, we put the boat in on the beach or on a ramp or something, and
Normal
this whole idea of dangling our boat off of a hoist, it was just a completely alien thing to us. And so there was a handful of us that would wheel our boats down to the end of the harbour and launch them there. And it was a fairly select group. There would be ourselves, Peter Colclough, John Loveday, Philippe Watt, and Jürgen Schonher. And we'd all wheel our boats down there every day, and we'd go past this guy with the hoist. He's like, "Oh, you don't want to use the hoist?" And we're like, "No, screw your hoist. We're going down here." So we just had this thing going, and he would be in the bar after sailing. So I got chatting to him, and he said, "Are you having a good time in California?" So we're having a great time. The sailing's fantastic, and yeah, just amazing time. But we came here for the girls as well, and that's not going so well. I've got 2 daughters. The next night introduced me to Annette.
That's awesome. And you guys together since?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So the period between 92 and 01, when you were shuttling back and forth, you were still obviously active in 50s then, right?
Yeah, well, I think I kind of look back on the 50 saying I kind of had two 50 lives. There was sort of like the beginning, and up to about 93, where I was racing pretty hard, and then I was married, and we had kids, and then I started a business, and so there was sort of from sort of 94 to really 04, so about 10 years where I was still sailing, but it was, you know, it wasn't a focus. It wasn't sort of a driving force in my life. It was just something that when there was time, I was doing. So, yeah.
And that was, a lot of people kind of struggle to, like my brother, as an example, if he's not going to go and feel like he can win, he's not going. You were able to kind of back burner it and sail on your the terms that life gave you.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where I'd always like to have had more time and more money and done it a bit better, but it's still 50 sailing, it's still racing with all the friends that you've made over the years.
Right.
So I think that's always the more important part than the result is catching up with old friends and having a good time and just enjoying sailing. Sure.
So did you have 2 boats at that time?
No. The 2 boat program started in 2011, I think. So that's the 10 year, the 2 boat program. Yeah.
And is that about the time you started sailing with Carl Smith?
So Carl and I started sailing in 04.
Oh, okay.
So, well, actually, I think it was 03. So I was sailing with a guy called Jay Council, who had been sailing 50s a long time. And he was kind of in the time of his life where he had kids who were busy and didn't always have enough time. Carl was sailing with Ryan Cox, who was completely unreliable. And we just found ourselves both at the same time not having another person to sail with. So we started filling in weekends together, and then we sort of went, "Hey, this is fun and we're good at this together. We should do this more seriously." So that's when we started sailing together.
Excellent. Cool. And Carl's first Worlds, if I'm not mistaken, would have been 92 Santa Cruz anyway, right?
Yep, he was there in 92 as well. Yeah.
With Art Gleason.
Yep.
Yeah, that was just about the time. That was, I don't know if I had my first old beater boat then, but it was like, I was bummed that I couldn't make it out to that because all my friends went and they had like as good a time as you did. I don't
Yeah.
know if anybody else met their wife, but they all had a good time. The sailing was top shelf for sure.
Yeah.
So so was Carl right away a boat partnership, or was that like how did you guys like invest together, or?
No, at that time I just got a new Van Munster, and so it was sort of the traditional skipper owner crew sort of setup,
Right.
and but we were kind of invested together. We put the time in, and we sailed a bunch. We had the Worlds in Santa Cruz in 04.
Yep.
And then we did the Worlds in 06. We borrowed a boat in the UK, which was sort of the start of the we can't keep borrowing boats, we need two boats.
Yeah, you had a couple of good stories about that this weekend, and I would like to unearth a bit more of that. But
yeah.
So tell us about the downfalls of borrowing a boat at the Worlds.
Well, I mean, you turn up and the boat isn't necessarily rigged how you would like it to be rigged. There are some things on a boat that typically aren't quite what you expected, and we've got better at it, but it's the first one. Some of it was our fault, some of it was the way the boat was rigged, but we went out the one at Hailing Island. I think on the first day the mast came down, so we spent the first night re-rigging a new mast and getting that together. And I think by the end of the event we'd replaced every fitting, every line, the mast, pretty much everything on the boat we'd replace. So it was incredibly expensive, and also very frustrating and cutting into the bar time.
Yeah. So was that the one where you were winning Ron Stan gear every day as race prizes, and then just giving it back to the guy whose toolbox you raided?
That was actually this year, 2020 at the Australian
Okay.
we borrowed a water rat, and it was a 25-year-old water rat, and yeah, as fast as we were getting the gift vouchers, we were spending them on the fittings out of Michael Quirk's toolbox.
Nice. But you still managed to win the regatta.
We did, yeah.
So that's pretty good. And that regatta, if I'm not mistaken, you sailed with Rob Wolfel, right?
Yeah.
So you, there are a lot of Mormon jokes that I'm struggling not to make, but you managed to have kept sister wives happy between Carl and Rob. You've got, two of anybody's must-have crews kind of on the hotline at the other end. How do you make that happen?
So I think, as I said, my sailing career was kind of two halves, the first half and the second half. And Carl and I ran pretty hard and serious for 6-7 years. And then he started having the family challenges. And I was at the point where I wanted to be sailing as much as I possibly could. Rob and I think we did a South of France regatta together that Carl couldn't make, and came third, and I had a good time. And as everybody who knows Rob's very easy to get along with, good fun in the same way that Carl is, and they're both physically very similar. They're both very athletic, very strong, and similar size and weight, although the sort of trade-off was Carl had all the experience and Rob was coming into it somewhat new.
Yep.
So Rob and I chatted. Carl didn't want to do the Worlds, or couldn't do the Worlds, I can't remember, in La Rochelle in 2012. Mm-hmm. So Rob and I put a bit of effort into training locally. By that time, Carl was heading to the other coast, so we couldn't do the weekend sailing together. Right. And so it was kind of the program for 2012. And then 2013, Carl was back in the boat again, and sort of Rob went back on the back burner. Then when 14 came along, Carl was like, I don't want to go to Kiel. No interest in going to Kiel.
What, just because it's too cold?
Too cold. There'll be no wind. It's Germany. It'll be rubbish. And And so I said to Rob, I said, hey, Carl doesn't want to go. Do you want to go? And we both sat down and decided that if we were going to go, we were going to go there and do it properly, because Barbados Worlds, the Germans had been 1, 2, and 3, and Carl and I had finished 4th, and they were a little bit overbearing in victory. And we decided that we were going to go to Germany and be overbearing in victory. So to do that, we needed to put in the time and the effort, and Rob was prepared to sign up for that. So that was kind of how that all happened.
Right on. So you sent me the picture that's now on Instagram of you and Rob winning the last race and sealing the regatta. I mean, it's like one of those pictures where you imagine what it must have felt like, and you get a little bit shivery. But it must have been a little bittersweet to do that and not have Carl there. I mean, that must have been a bit verklempt.
I think we kind of always considered it to be a 3-man team.
Yep.
You know, it's the culmination of 3 people's efforts rather than 2, which has, you know, really made it so much more successful. It's allowed us to put more time into the program, more money, because, you know, it's not an inexpensive endeavor to run multiple boats and the sales and the travel and what have you.
Right.
And yeah, I know, you know, when we had the interviews and I said my piece at the prize giving, it was always a 3-man team. Carl wasn't there for that first main event, but we wouldn't have got there without the effort that was put in to get to that point. And, you know, as you've seen since, the results aren't any different whether it's Rob or Carl, you know.
True. Yeah. So just to briefly sort of set that up, I've got here in front of me 2019 second, 2018 second, 2017 first, 2016 second, 2015 first, 2014 first, and then obviously Barbados was 2013 fourth. So of the last 7 worlds, which is like a full series worth of scores, you're throwing out a 7 at the worlds. That's insane.
Yeah. We sat down after the 2012 Worlds and did a sort of an autopsy on our performance, and we were I had it rubbed into me by 2 people, by Jan Salgman and Ian Mitchell, and they both said to me, I said, Holt, don't get it. You're so fast when it's windy and you're so damn slow when it's not. And at that point, you know, Rob and I walked away, and I went back to Carl and said, we have to address our light wind performance. You know, we're never going to be able to put together a series if we can't compete across the wind range.
Right.
We went away, changed the mast, changed sails, and just focused on being better in the light stuff. And, you know, in 14, we just went to all the events around Europe that we thought were going to be light, and made sure we could compete in that, and that worked.
And so the gear changes, you went from the Glazer sails to Pinellas, right?
Yeah, we changed mast.
Okay.
So we changed to the Selden mast, which was a bit more consistent.
So you went from an M2 to an Alto?
To an Alto, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We'd always been switching between P&B and Glazer anyway. We'd use both. Okay. And we just felt, in the breeze, we felt the Glazers were quicker, and in the light stuff, we felt the P&Bs were quicker. And we knew where our weakness was. So right. that was kind of where we went to focus on. But it seems like it certainly didn't cost you much in breeze, right? All these changes. No, and I think that was quite encouraging. That we actually got to the Worlds in Kiel, and we were convinced it was going to be light, and so we lost a lot of weight. I think Rob was down to under 205, which is pretty light for him. I was I was under 160, which was super light for me. And we get there, and it was clearly going to be a windy event. The forecast was it to be windy. You could see the pre-worlds was going to be light to moderate, and then the wind was going to come in as the fronts came through. And we had one race in the pre-worlds where there was a bit more breeze, and we didn't feel very quick. And we had this crazy conversation, Rob and I, where we were going to, we just had P&Bs with us. We were going to get our glazers FedExed from the US out to us for the Worlds, and then rig up an M2. And it was just like, and we sort of sat there and we put the whole plan together. And then I said to Rob, I spent too much money this year. All the events we've done around Europe, all the travel, all the money we spent, I can't afford it. Can't do it. I can't spend any more money on this. He went, no problem. So sat down with Nelly, said, Nelly, we've got Ian Pennell.
Right.
We've got to go faster in a breeze. It's going to be windy. We've got to go faster in a breeze. What can we do? He said, put your spreaders in one hole. That's not going to be enough. He's like, put the spreaders in one hole, try it. Well, I'm like, what have I got to lose? It's cheaper than shipping sails all around the world. And so we tipped the boat over, put the spreaders in one hole. In the meantime, we were both eating everything we could consume. I think Rob went from 205 to 215. I probably put on 5 or 6 pounds, and the Worlds happened, and the breeze was up, and we were easily the fastest boat in the breeze, and the rest was easy.
Phenomenal. That's awesome. And then 2015, was that a short cycle between 14 and 15?
Yeah, that was just sort of 6 months between them.
And then you go and ring the bell with Carl at the next one.
Yeah.
That must have been
yeah, just put everything in the container and sent it straight to South Africa. I mean, we were lucky because the US container didn't make it because of shipping.
I heard about that.
problems. Yeah. So if we'd have been shipping a boat from the West Coast, we'd have been in trouble. We weren't, so we were lucky there.
Cool. And then we go 2017. You win a very mixed Worlds in Annapolis. But remember, according to Macy, there's always 10 knots out in the bay. As we learned last week.
There definitely wasn't always 10 knots out there in 17.
I've seen some videos that would make 10 knots a very generous figure. But there were some windy races too, right?
Yeah. We had three good races, and then we had the rest were definitely square running and sitting on the side tanks a lot. Right. So just enough of everything for us. But we also it was just one of those weeks where every roll of the dice seemed to come up our way. We just could do no wrong.
It's nice when that happens. Yeah. So while I'm throwing Macy under the bus here, he said one of the most endearing and also I think true things that I've heard on the podcast for sure. And he said, I've only got so much time in life to go sailing. I know if I sailed other boats, it would make me a better sailor. But the time I've got to allocate to sailing, I'm just going to allocate to 5-0 sailing, and that's it. And that's my choice. And kudos to him. It's awesome. I wish he could have sailed this weekend. And I'm glad he's going to be on the mend soon. But you've now, despite your early career, you're now doing all sorts of different stuff, right?
Yeah, I've always sort of done a bit of a mixture of different things. So through the years, I've done. I grew up keelboat sailing, so sailing on yachts as well has been reasonably sort of a natural thing for me. So in the 90s, I did Melgis 24s and Mum 36s and different bits and pieces. And then being on the West Coast, I've done plenty of more 24 sailing. I've done a Transpac on Merlin.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, a little bit of everything. So
How was the
yeah.
trans pack? Is that something you would sign up for again, or?
I'm extremely grateful and pleased to have done it once. We had a phenomenal crew with a bunch of 505 sailors on board as well.
Right on.
Which was we had an amazing crew and an amazing time. But I think I'm probably one and done on the basis that it would have to be a better offer than doing it on Merlin with a great crew.
Yeah.
And I don't think those are ever going to come around again.
Pretty much drop the mic on that one. That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that I saw a thing where you had sailed with somebody on 14s recently in the front of the boat.
Yeah, I did. I did in the late 90s. I was sailing 49ers as well. I was sailing with Jim Maloney, who a lot of people who listen to this will know Jim. He used to sail 50s in the 80s and 90s.
Yep, I recognize the name.
New Zealand. So we did a 49er campaign reasonably successfully. And his daughter's gone on to win a silver medal in the FX, and Andy, one of their sons, has just won the Fingold Cup.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Like New Zealand never won the Gold Cup, and now bang bang.
And as much as I'm from the US, he's from New Zealand.
Fantastic. So that actually brings up a good point. You had been sniffing around the very front of the worlds forever. You had a few seconds and fourths and sevenths and stuff thrown in there, and then it takes you, a month and a half to win two. Like, is there something that just cracked open inside your psyche to, like, what changed?
That's a good question. I think desire was probably one thing. I think when we went to San Francisco in 2009, our goal was, Carl and I think we had a run of 10, 11, 12 at the Worlds. We just couldn't seem to crack the top 10. And basically because of the inconsistencies that Jan and Ian pointed out, that we were rubbish when it was light.
Right.
San Francisco wasn't going to give us that problem, right? So we didn't want to let ourselves down in San Francisco. So we put a ton of training into San Francisco with the goal of being top 5, really. And a podium finish would have been really, really cool. I've got two of my really good friends are Bruce Edwards and Dave Shelton. And I'd had 20 years of Dave rubbing in the fact that he'd finished 3rd at the Worlds twice. So I really needed
one of which was the 92 one, right?
Was the 92, yeah.
Yeah.
So I really needed to try to beat that. So it was, to be honest, going into 2009, Mike was clearly the best. We were out there to be second best. And as it turned out, we actually had a shot at winning the Worlds, which was very exciting. And the adrenaline of actually, we were match racing for a world title was incredible. And then we go to Australia for the Hamilton Island Worlds in 2011. And I think in 2011, I felt we were comfortably the quickest boat, but we made a couple of mistakes, and we were sailing with single pole instead of twin pole. But yet still, we go into the last race, really a match race with Wolfgang and Julian. And it took me months afterwards to get over losing that one. We blew it. There were so many things I looked back on and went, ah. And that moment is what fueled making sure that I didn't spend the rest of my life going coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Right.
And I think that coming second twice really hurt. And made sure I put the effort in to not let that happen a third time.
Okay. And you're also, we had Eric, we had Reeve, and now we've got you, and you guys all take part to one degree or another in the Team Tuesday Norte. Is that just an unbeatable force? Like, must everyone do that if they want to win the Worlds? Seems like it.
It's a pretty powerful tool, and it's also motivational, right? We all want to beat each other every time we go out.
Yeah.
And it keeps driving us on. And when we go we can get half a dozen boats turn up and half of them are world champions. It's pretty crazy. So it does, and the amount of knowledge and experience there, and every time we go out, we learn something and we get a little bit better. Yep. So I think it's definitely, you look at the results and you can see clearly, the Fremantle results with 1, 2, and 3 was
and 5, right, or something.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, and 5. Yeah.
Okay, it works.
Yeah, it does work, but we all know that, right? I was sailing in the early 90s, and we had a tuning group every winter that was made up of Ian Barker, Mark Upton Brown, Paul Towers, and myself, and 3 of that 4 won the worlds inside of the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So I was the holdout. It took me a bit longer. I'm a bit slower.
So one of my favorite sailing moments was at I think it was 1995 Key West. I lucked into a very good situation with the Malgus 24 program, and we tied Ian Barker when he was the current 5-0 world champion. He broke the tie break, so he got 9th and we got 10th. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So he was, and he got even faster. I mean, he won an Olympic medal after that too, right?
Yeah.
Pretty good sailor. So so you guys obviously have your program that works like a clock. We're replicating it a little bit with Zonnie and Allery and the Ingalls and Tom Kivney and some other boats in Rhode Island now. Like, what do we do? Coach us. What like, how do we set it up?
Well, I think the first thing to do is go sailing.
Yep.
Just get out there, but don't just go out there without having the boats calibrated so that you can talk.
Right.
You have to share a language so that you know what you're doing, how you are set up, and that all the boats are common. So we can go in and say we were at 7, the board was at 1. Be able to relate all your information.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've also got to be brutally honest. If you're slower, own it.
Yep.
If you're faster, talk about why, and keep stepping forward. And but also make sure that you have goals, and then you debrief afterwards. And I think you have to change it up a bit. We do a lot of 1 lap racing.
Yep.
Which tends to give you an indicator. Sometimes you'll feel faster, sometimes you'll feel slower. And then we'll do other events in San Francisco. Is not a very good boat tuning venue, so the repetitive racing kind of gets you good at the boat handling, and you get a picture, right, who's faster. Yep. It's not a definitive lineup where one boat's faster, but if the same boat gets the windward mark first every time, then they're probably faster.
Yeah.
So feed all that information in and learn from it, and keep pushing each other. And I think that it becomes self-fueling after a while.
Okay. And then there are some people who aren't lucky enough to be near enough to other good sailors to do that. So if you had to go it alone for a while, like, what would you focus on? How would you make that work for yourself?
You can't beat ours in the boat. For 09, Carl and I really had no training partners. We went out of Redwood City, and occasionally we'd have Nick Adamson and Steve Bordeaux or somebody else join us. Yep. But for the most part, we were going out on our own and just putting the hours in, and the time will work too. So it's definitely the old adage of time in the boat. It definitely works. So.
Okay.
And learn how the boat feels. I think the 5-0 is really, people say, oh, there's a load of string, it's very complicated. I really don't think it is that complicated. I think you're either underpowered or overpowered, and you need to know how to change gear between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So learn where it needs to be to change that. If the boom's off over the quarter of the boat, you need to depower. If the boom's in the middle of the boat, you need to power up. Just learn what makes that gear change.
Right. Okay. So the other thing, we have a bunch of cyclists in the 5-0 class. It seems like everybody rides bikes. What are you riding on these days?
So I either road or mountain. So um, depending on when I'm up in Tahoe, it tends to be biased towards mountain biking.
Okay.
Although I'm still doing a bit of road biking, but I've got great trails out of the back door. So I've got, Rob and Reeve live very close by, so we'll meet up after work and hit the trails, or some road biking when that makes more sense.
So have you got a good old La Honda time going, or you ever do that one?
What was that?
The old La Honda climb. I think it's near to you. I don't know. My cousin goes to, I mean, my nephew goes to Stanford and he does it all the time. And it's like one of the big.
That's probably more up by Half Moon Bay, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is that sort of the meat of your physical training is bike riding?
Yeah. So I think bike riding just makes hiking easy.
Yep.
Yeah. The more, and it's not bike riding, it's climbing hills on the bike makes hiking easy.
Yeah.
And then I've got a rowing machine, Concept 2, that I try and get 10 or 20 minutes 3 or 4 times a week on.
Yep.
And that makes the sheeting in pretty easy.
Right.
And then I do a bit of running as well. So that's kind of my fitness. I think as I get a bit older, I think I need to keep fitter and stronger. When you're 25, it's fairly easy, but when you're not, it gets harder. And I've always, anybody who sailed with me will tell you I'm a pretty physical sailor, and so being on top of that is really important. And I want to make sure I can hike as hard and as long as anybody else,
right?
And push the boat harder and for longer than anybody else. So that's always my goal. And I'm not going to be the guy who gives up first.
Yeah, that's a good goal. And so you mentioned before Kiel, you went down to some anorexia weight. Are you pretty happy with like, do you guys try to change size at all for different events now, or are you pretty locked in?
Yeah, no, we sort of definitely dropped weight for, we dropped a lot of weight for Annapolis. We wouldn't bother for San Francisco.
Right.
But I think Bermuda as well. I've said to Carl, he's got to be under 215 for that one. So we'll see how he does.
Carl's. Somebody said that brought up Carl, you're in, or Carl said he was in shape, and somebody said Brown's in shape. He's a big unit right now.
He's fit and strong, but he could definitely he knows what he's got to do.
But you guys were plenty fast this past weekend, and the worst the bay could. I mean, it was motorboat chop and 0 to 6, and you guys were, you chucked up some rough ones, but you still won.
Yeah, but it's easier if you throw 30 or 40 pounds out of the boat.
Yeah, I hear you. Cool. So what? I mean, this is going to be a pretty active year, right? You're what all is on the menu?
Yeah. So we've got the North Americans. I've got tickets booked to go out and do the Europeans and the UK Nationals.
Okay. And those are in June-ish?
July.
Okay.
July. So hopefully that happens, and I'll have neither Rob or Carl in the boat for that. I think Tim Needham is going to be crewing for me at those two.
And he's done it. I mean, he's like no stranger to 5-0s, right? He's really, really good.
No, he's crewed for Andy Smith.
Yeah.
A bunch, and pushed us all very hard with Andy in Weymouth. I'm sure they still have sleepless nights about coulda, shoulda, woulda there. So that'll be fun. And he's sort of, again, sort of similar size to Carl and Rob. So he's, from my perspective, it makes it easy that I haven't got to adjust the way I do anything. So.
Right. Okay. And then California schedule pretty, you got like your Santa Cruz regatta and.
Yeah, we've not got a huge amount on the West Coast, just because I think planning for this year was always going to be pretty difficult.
Yep.
So, yeah, we've got a few events, and then North Americans, and then on to Bermuda.
So what do we have to do to convince you? We have a couple of really good events. Buzzards Bay Regatta, which is early August, and then Newport Regatta, which is like 2 weeks after that, and then you got a short gap until North Americans.
Carl and I chatted about it, so
I think that's a
there's
good
a
chat.
chance. I
Continue
think
that chat.
the less chance there is of the UK stuff happening, the more chance there is of doing that.
Is the UK stuff still at risk a little?
I don't think we can take anything for granted these days, can
Right,
we?
right.
So until I get on the plane, I won't believe it's happening.
Right, but you're on the world exec committee, right? I don't.
Yes.
So
yeah.
we do these monthly meetings, and you come to them regularly, and but the world is the outlook is pretty good right now, right?
I think the world's is very solid. I think
Okay.
They've done a really good job. That they've got no problem with us all going. They want us to go there.
Yep.
So if we had the Worlds were in Australia, we would be out of luck, right? They've already said nobody until 22. So I think we're lucky that one, it's late in the year, so we've got more time for everything to recover.
Yeah.
And that they've got a very good handle on the local situation. So I think that's pretty good. I think the risk with the Europeans is really what's going on in Europe at the time and how the numbers are doing. And at the moment, I think it looks reasonably good. But France have currently got a ban from going to the UK to France. So I think all these things are still very fluid.
Right. And then in the longer run, you're going to be the regatta chairman for the 2023 Worlds.
Worlds, yes. Yeah.
So a little early pitch for that for everybody who's listening.
Well, I mean, clearly that's why I'm here now. So
you'll meet your wife.
Yeah. It's the best venue in the world for 5-0 sailing. Everybody who's had a good day in Santa Cruz will tell you that. It's a great ashore. I think it's the only place in the world where you can go and sail in 20 knots of breeze and then have to paddle back into the harbour after sailing. I think that's almost unheard of, and it's warm and sunny ashore, and plenty of places to stay. Lots to do when you're not sailing. You've got Yosemite and Sierras and San Francisco and Big Sur coastline. It's pretty much got it all. That's why I live here.
Fantastic. And what time of the year is that going to be?
We're going to hold it, so it will be in October.
Oh.
We've been kind of watching the weather for the last few years because we started talking about this, and the fall season here, we still get great breeze every afternoon, and it's been consistent. The fog tends to sort of move off the coast a bit, and we just get a lovely sort of 15, 18 on a big day, 22, 23 knots of breeze, but we get it pretty much every day. Whereas in the summer, we can get big high pressure sit over the shore and just fog us out and get skunked, as sort of partially happened at the 04 Worlds. So we've been watching for the last few years and gone, that's the best time of year to have it. And I think it works really well for the Europeans because they can finish their season and then ship the boats.
Yep.
And for the Southern Hemisphere boats to South Africa, Australia, etc., their seasons haven't started, so they'll get their boats back before their season starts.
Perfect. Ideal. All right. So as we near the end here, I want to let you get onto your Memorial Day weekend, but you've given your first answer to your best 5-0 memory, but that was a great one. But it's the time when I got to ask you the other one. So what was your other best 5-0 memory?
Almost every time you go downwind in Santa Cruz in 20 plus knots is pretty hard to beat. But I think it has to be going around the leeward mark with one beat ahead of us in keel when we go around the leeward mark and sheet in, and I said to Rob, this is going to seem like the longest beat we ever do, but it's going to be worth it. And I think that moment when it sort of dawned on us both that, okay, all we got to do is get to the finishing line now.
And so that was pretty much a keep the rig up and we win, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So
cool.
I didn't put the Cunningham on. I didn't touch anything. We just sailed up the beat, and yes, I think that the last beat of the keel was, the wind was up, the boat was flying, and we were in complete control. It was that would be it. Which
Super.
yeah.
All right. And then, you know, full disclosure to everybody listening, we did have a little chat about the next guest conundrum, and it was, you know, Mike's a thoughtful guy, and he's got a few good ideas, but we agreed to table it until he would make a game time decision, and what came out of his mouth is what comes out of his mouth. So that's about to come out of his mouth now. Who's the next guest?
It is. Well, I think I've enjoyed listening to the previous ones. Hopefully people have enjoyed listening to this. I think the person I know with the most history, the most stories, and the most entertaining person to talk about 505s is the one and only Pip Pearson. So I think we need to get him on the slate and have him talk about it, because his stories are legendary.
I love it. I love it. It's a great idea. We will make that happen. All right. So, Mike, it was great to meet you last weekend. Great to sail against you. I look forward to seeing you again at Buzzards Bay, because I know that's going to happen. But thank you so much for all you do for the class and for this. And I can't wait to sail against you soon. Thank you, Dave, and thanks for having me. It's been great to be on, and thanks for doing everything you've been doing for the class as well. Awesome. It's fun. That's amazing. Thank you. All right, cool. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye, Mike. Bye.